Good afternoon from La Mata. I'm here with Ubi, my son. He was supposed to be at school today, but what did you do in the van last night?
Sorry?
What did you do in the van last night?
Vomit.
Yeah, vomit all over the back of the van. So he's off school today, which is one of the reasons the live cast is actually late, because we're supposed to start about 3 o'clock today. But as you can see, no, we didn't. It's the usual thing. Plan something and it doesn't go ahead as planned. So we got Ub in here today anyway, so we might as well talk to Ub. So how do you find school in Spain, Ub? Great. What do you do there? Come a bit closer to the microphone. What do they teach you?
They teach me math, language, Spanish.
Speak to the microphone.
They teach me math, language, the language in Spanish is English,
So
Valencian, science, and another different science.
So do they teach you different subjects with different languages?
Yeah.
What do they teach you in art? What language do they speak in art?
Wait, they don't have any art.
They don't have any art. What about sports?
Sports?
Yeah. What language do they speak in sports?
Spanish.
Spanish? I thought they speak Valencian in sports. You're not sure?
No, I'm not sure.
So what languages do you learn in school then? What?
I only learn English and Spanish and Valencian.
Only 3 languages.
Yeah.
And how do you find it? Is it hard or easy?
For the English, easy. Valencian, hard. And Spanish is same as English.
So how easy was it to learn Spanish when you first come to Spain?
Sorry?
When you first come to Spain, you didn't speak any Spanish, did you?
Nope.
So how quickly did you learn? How long did it take? Was it quick?
Yeah.
How did you learn? Is it because you have so many friends that speak Spanish?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did the school help you, or you just have to learn?
I just have to.
Yeah, they don't speak to you in English, do they? They make you learn Spanish, don't they?
Yeah, and I make them learn English.
You make them learn English. Do any of your friends speak English?
Sultan.
He
speaks Arabic, Spanish, Russian, and English.
And what languages do you speak?
Filipino, Spanish, Valencian, Russian, and English.
Yeah, that's you speak two. Do you speak Tagalog and Bisaya?
Yeah.
So you speak 2 languages in the Philippines as well.
Yeah, I have 7 languages. I'm English.
You're multilingual.
I'm English.
Malingish?
Linguish.
So since you vomited in my van, you've had today off. So what did you do this morning? And what did you go to the market?
Just mommy. She said stay in the van.
No, did you go to the market?
To buy churros?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was with you. We got some churros today. So what do you like about Spain?
Well, fishing.
Fishing.
And going to the beach.
And going to the beach. Anything else about your friends or play parks or?
My friends and play parks.
Your friends at play parks.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else you want to talk to people on the live show about?
No.
No. Are you feeling okay now?
Yeah.
Now you gave me your cold.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. All right, we're going to play then. Yeah, if anybody's got anything they want to chat about, like I said, I do apologize for being late today, but with Ubi was supposed to be at school today, but instead is at home after being ill last night. So it's why the live chat's a bit late, and generally it's pretty quiet here in La Mata, and now the market's gone. For ourselves this week, what I'm contemplating doing at the moment is whether I should hop into the UK for a couple of months to do some contract work, as it seems things are starting to pick up now. If I can't get some of the remote stuff. That's the big frustration for me work-wise, is trying to get companies to understand that they don't need you to be in country. There's a lot of time you spend most of your time in front of a computer screen, sat in an office somewhere doing exactly what you could do at home, but the difference is you've got no commute time, you've got no hassles of being in hotels, etc. You can just focus on getting the work done, and often it's very much easier at home, because with a lot of the corporations you can't just plug into a printer, for example. So you can turn up there and it could take you a couple of hours just to get a printer connection to print something off. Very simple. But trying to change that mindset, trying to post a little bit on LinkedIn, trying to get some more work in that way. But everything else is pretty good. April's not here today either. April started doing a college course this week. She's getting some sort of certification at the end of the week relating to it's for working at the school. But there's one thing we're going there. She's actually found to got a load more courses that she's now interested in doing as well. So there's a lot of opportunities in there. I noticed she did say last night that there's like maths tuition, and I think they're doing some advanced English at the same place, because I do find that people seem to invest in their kids a lot here. The kids seem to be the priority, which is nice. You know, even work-wise, you find a lot of people's priority is the children beyond everything else. It's very family-oriented from where we are in Spain. That's the one thing I will say. I do love it here for that aspect, if it's the only one, but obviously you've got the good weather. The downside, I suppose, is with having such a mixed school from people from everywhere, you pick up more colds and things than you would in the UK. Well, I say that these days, probably not. It's probably about the same. But yeah, I do find that I've had about 4 or 5 colds in the last 12 months, which normally I don't really get any. But it's all coming from the school, because the kids come in, they're sick for a day, then they pass it on to you. Fantastic. So anybody got anything they want to ask? Anything they want to talk about? I was chatting to Andreas this morning as well, because he's been busy, which is why we haven't really connected too much. I was supposed to go over there last weekend, but it was April's birthday, my wife's birthday, so I couldn't really disappear off, which is where the road trips have appeared on the channel. Those videos have come from when I was out with April, went to a few restaurants and things. One thing I will say about La Mata, there's a couple of restaurants on the boardwalk. I recommend reservations, because there's a few. I think it's called the Fusion Restaurant. We tried to get in there the other night, couldn't get in there because you need a reservation. I know the Mississippi, sometimes you need a reservation with that one as well, otherwise you can't get in. But yeah, there's only 2 or 3. The rest of them are fine. We wanted to try the Fusion. I was going to take April there for a night out for a birthday, but couldn't get in. It's not fully booked. It's just, I think, because it does a lot of fresh seafood and meat. I think it does a lot of the stuff to order, so maybe doesn't stock that much because it's daily produce. So they were just a bit fussy on us getting into the restaurant because of that. Because it was busy, but at the same time, we don't mind sitting outside even. But I think it was just they had limited food as well. So, which is fine. They're obviously doing okay to be so selective. So anybody got any questions? What about the Brexit? Well, the Brexit stuff, I would say I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to ignore it for probably about 8-9 months, simply because the tabloids are going to make a field day of it. And there's going to be a lot of saber rattling and peacock feathers of politicians that are sinking into obscurity or coming up to retirement. They come out with silly things just to get in the media. My personal view on it is just wait and see. At the moment, it's very difficult to see where anything's going on that side. So no point even engaging on it right now until we actually get something more solid to work with. There's no contract signed. There's nothing being agreed. They're on about, I think today, they're on about an extension of the freedom of movement, which I expected anyway, because it's going to be very, very difficult to get anything out of the EU for the UK if it doesn't have the freedom of movement in there as a main strategy. So we'll wait and see. But everything else, like I said, is pretty quiet here. The holiday season's almost upon us. I can see the La Mata starting to get a bit more busier, and we're in Torrevieja most nights this week, picking April up from college, and that's been a lot busier as well. I can see things starting to get into holiday season. You know, the people starting to arrive, places are starting to come alive. And obviously the seasonal work, there's a lot more people starting to be employed in restaurants and things as everything starts to pick up. One of the things I do caution people about, though, is relating to having a British car in Spain. Make sure that your tax is up to date, because they do check it online, because obviously the UK, lovely country, puts everything accessible so they can see if you've got your tax, your MOT, and that sort of stuff. And if you are here, get an ITV on it. The ITV, which is the equivalent of the MOT, I find isn't anywhere near as tough as the UK MOT. It does have some strict guidelines where some people do complain, like they don't like modifications to the vehicle and things, and they may fail it on a modification until you get it back to factory default. The same as the tinted windows. There's a certification for the tinted windows, because some people were saying they had one that was factory fitted, you know, from the manufacturer, and it got refused for an ITV because the tinted windows weren't certificated. I assume, and don't quote me on this because I haven't got a car to go and check if the tinted windows will be fine. If you went to one of these places, because there's only a few of them that actually do this stuff that can give you a certification with your tinted windows, I'm sure you could probably pay them just to give you a certificate, in the sense that they check your car, it reaches the standard, and they just go, okay, that's fine, give us 20 euros or something. Because there's nothing that sort of says that it has to be them fitting it. You just need their certificate. So it's one of those little things. And that's one thing I was saying to April earlier. There's a bit of ambiguity with a lot of things in Spain, and interpretation, which is where a lot of these problems come from. The prime example of that is this thing between the difference between how I see Alicante and Torrevieja Foreigners Office see the immigration paperwork. They seem to see it from different perspectives, and they're not the same, which is why I found Alicante easier to deal with than the Torrevieja office in some ways. But once I straightened out the Torrevieja office, it wasn't too bad. It was just a case of getting them to accept the paperwork. Because everything was there, it just didn't tick the boxes, but it ticked the boxes no problem in Alicante, which is just like, all this headache for this. Just go in there, yeah, that's fine, thank you very much. And yeah, the other one's a lot more strict on its viewpoint. But its viewpoint may actually not in my interpretation, I think the Alicante's got the right interpretation of it. But obviously, everybody you speak to says, yeah, but they're awkward at Torrevieja, and from what I've heard, it's worse. So I'm just like, well, as long as it goes through, I really don't want to be doing this regularly because it's a real headache. It's time consuming. And I know we've got the school paperwork, which will be coming up again soon. But it shouldn't be so difficult going into this year. It was a bit more difficult last year because we'd gone from the juniors into primary. So there was a lot of paperwork that they had when we first enrolled in the juniors, but now in the primary school, had to do it all over again. That sort of stuff is quite normal. There's a lot of paperwork. I mean, even for a car, you got to get the padron and things like that, which is obviously to say where you live. There's a lot of stuff. That's it. Daniel Morris, how would it be getting language work? I'll have a look at that link you've sent over. I'll have a look at it. There's language work about. Talk Spain mentioned a few places the other day when I was talking to him, because there is language work for when you work online. There's work for doing it through things like Skype and what have you. There's a lot of stuff out of Asia you can get, for China, Vietnam, Thailand, as well as a lot of the Spanish world. It all depends on what access you have to the people and the rates. Because I think if you're starting out on the English teaching, I think you've got to develop your teaching skills in the sense you've got to have a methodical process to it. You've got to develop the courses and things and be able to identify if somebody's got specific issues in their language, is getting them to adapt to your way of teaching. But it's got to be something that works for everybody. But there's certainly work out there. The big concern with me at the moment with doing the English teaching is that it would take me time to get it rolling, which is why I'm thinking, should I hop into the UK, do 3 months contract work, and that'll be us financially till next year. But there's certainly work out there for doing English teaching. Daniel, is that your website? Daniel Morris posted Das Team EU. I assume you do English teaching. Business English. Yeah, 'cause my German isn't up to date. Although I lived in Germany for a while, I haven't spoke it for a few years. Let me see. I spent 6 years of my childhood in Germany. I used to live in Minden, and before Minden, Bielefeld. Where is that? The English is switched off for some reason. But yeah, you can teach English, but the big problem we have is we're on the coast, so there's a lot less stuff around on this area. But I mean, I want to predominantly do things from home anyway, so I'm not sure it'll work with me too much. It's because the problem I've got with the English teaching is I want to develop a system for it and a process for it, and try and get more people teaching. Because I do know you can make a reasonable income on it, and I know if myself and my wife were teaching English, say 4 hours a day each, we could easily make enough money to pay our bills in Spain. But rate-wise, I know Spanish Speaks was saying that he can get up to, say, 30 euros an hour for teaching for corporations and companies and private lessons. And I know from Asia you can get probably around maybe $15 to $20, but some of them will start you off at about $10. I know if you're not a proficient teacher or still easing into it, you may be better off doing it a bit cheaper, simply while you're getting up to speed, because at the end of the day, I've got my TESOL certificate, but I didn't really get much out of the course in the sense of structuring the programs. So for me, I need to build my own programs or get a better understanding of how to structure the programs. Because I could teach how to, I could teach somebody English, but I need to structure it in a way that actually turns around and they're getting the most out of it. I mean, it's a bit like when you look at things like Duolingo or some of the software out there. It doesn't really take you beyond the vocabulary because they're not really pushing your speech. They're not pushing corrections in your dialects, and they're not going over proper conversational levels. Daniel Morris, thanks. Is there any company work, I suppose, in companies? Yes, there is. There is also work with some of the English schools as well. One of the big things you get with the English schools, though, when I say English schools, I mean the schools that have English lessons, be it private or private or state, is they're often on contracts. So you're unlikely to get a full-time job out of it. You're going to get a contract for, say, 8 months or something. And I know from the kids' school, they've had a few teachers come and go and change over the year because they've had budget changes. They've had, the usual thing with maternity leave and things like that. But I do know that sometimes some of these schools will cut you off just before the big holidays start, because they're saving themselves money because they're not paying you holiday pay. So this is where a lot of people are autonomous, they're self-employed. Now, I will say that for us, we've got a stable income for Spain, but I need to increase it because we want to head back to the Philippines for a month this year. So to do that, I need to bring in some extra cash to afford a month away. And obviously, flights, I'm going to be talking probably nearly £3,000 in flights. So, that's why I've got to be proactive in making some extra cash. But also, I would say there's a lot of stuff online. If you search around for the ESL, there's ESL groups, ESL jobs. Daniel Morris, thanks for that info. What about German? Any call for that? German is exactly... See, the thing is, if you're doing a lot of this stuff online, you can do it anywhere. But yeah, there'll be people wanting German because if they're a Spanish company with contracts or whatever with Germany, then they're going to need some level of fluency because of having to work at a corporate level where they need business English. Because that's one of my downfalls at the moment, because my Spanish is... I can get away with most things, but because I come from a corporate background, doing what I do in the UK, I couldn't do in Spain. Because though I understand the legislation in English, if it come down to me looking through, say, a scope of work for a contract, I couldn't actually translate that to make sure that the contract was actually 100% viable and we're reaching all the restrictions within the contract. Also, we're not overdoing things as well, because obviously my fluency ain't a business level. Graham's Life 25, you live in Spain, why do you need a holiday to the Philippines? Because my wife wants to go back home. My wife lost her father at the start of this year. So going to see her mother and sister, etc. It's a family holiday. We won't be back for 3 years, so that's why we're going to be heading back, just for a bit of a tour, see everybody, see how everybody's going. We also have property in the Philippines as well, so we rent out apartments there. So that's another thing, because we're still developing that as well. So ultimately, there's stuff going on in the background related to the Philippines. That's why we're heading back there for a month. But yeah, we do we love Spain. It's a nice place. Don't really have a lot of the hang-ups that I experienced in the UK. I mean, the UK, I find these days, it's okay for work, but a lot of things just seem to have changed so much these days. It's very difficult to relate to it as a country that I have an attachment beyond my well, I wasn't even brought up there. I spent most of my childhood in other countries because my family were ex-forces. So I don't really have that one town, being brought up there, knowing the neighbors and all that sort of stuff, because I spent my childhood in different countries where we moved every 3 years. But yeah, even the time I've spent in the UK, because we moved there in 1989, it's changed so much over that time. So it's a different country. It's not one I would like my kids to grow up in anymore. But also I find that everything's got a cost to it. In Spain, there's a lot of stuff that's just simply free. You know, if you go to sports facilities, you can go out the door here, and you can go on the beach, but you've also got just up the road 5-a-side football, basketball courts, and a lot of activities right on the doorstep. You can cycle everywhere. There's cycle paths as well along a lot of the roads as well. So there's a lot of reasons for living in Spain, as from a health benefit point of view. But yeah, what else would you say, Ub? What else would you like about Spain? What? He's thinking. What about the pizza? Is the pizza good here? Pizza. Yeah. So, yeah, that's why we want to go back to the Philippines. But also, I do rate life in Spain above that of the UK these days. The reason I say these days, I couldn't speak in prior years related to the relationship between Spain and the UK, because I hadn't come to Spain until recently. But from what I've seen on the transition of what's going on in the UK, it's changed a lot in such a short period of time. It's just not for me anymore. I know, so some people say, well, the UK is great and all this sort of stuff. It's up to personal preference. For me, I like Spain. I prefer Spain. I think Spain's better for the kids. I think it's better. My son and daughter speak multiple languages. They're in an environment which is very family friendly. I can't really ask for much more. Getting work locally is the headache. But this is why I'm trying to concentrate on developing it online more, because that's viable. And I think once you get to a certain level, it starts to roll anyway. It's a bit like Google search. If you're on the first page, then you're getting all the traffic. If you're on page 14, you're getting nothing. You got to keep working at it until you get up to the first page, and then it takes a bit of maintaining, but it's not as hard as it was when you're on page 14. Yeah, that's it. Daniel Morris, the past is a foreign country. Exactly. I do find it very difficult in the sense that, where people say, well, you're British. It's like, well, what does that even mean these days? Because there's so much hypocrisy, and it's very difficult for people to actually put a valid argument on that anymore. And yeah, for me, it's very difficult. I do think Spain is probably a lot more relaxed on the politics as well. I think there's a lot of internal politics, but at the same time, a lot of the global politics doesn't really seem to affect people in the same way. They don't seem to be so aggressive with it. Or, the big thing here at the moment is Valencian being pushed into the schools. That's an issue. What goes on with Donald Trump, not even spoken about. Nobody even talks about it. There was a bit when he was coming up to the election, but that was more to do with I think it was the Football Federation did something with the advertising relating to Trump and racial stuff. Because obviously, the football teams, many that have got a full team from people in their own country at a Premier level, because at the end of the day, they take the best players and they come from everywhere. That's it at the end of the day. Yeah, but that's one thing I will say. Everyone just seems to be more relaxed. And that's the important bit. And like I said, the thing is, I'm sitting here trying to define where I'm going to take things now, because at the moment, I want to try and stay in Spain without having to hop into the UK, but I need to start getting it moving this week. I've nearly finished the website work I've been on, which is a big time consumer, but I've probably about another 40 hours left on that, and that'll be off my table. And then I can move on to other things. One of the things I will say, though, Daniel Morris, one of the things for English teaching is YouTube. If you look around YouTube, there's a lot of stuff that is indirect, in the sense that if you are doing videos on English or German or whatever, doing some basic courses or basic videos on like the differences in sounds with the letters, you know, relating to like with in Germany, like the bee with a tail, the bee with a tail, like a double P sort of thing, being a double S, so it's like Straße, that sort of thing, that you would get people logging in to look at it. But then what you find out is that after that, you start to get people emailing you for private lessons, or there's some, you know, there's add-on things that people want, and that's pretty useful with YouTube. I know the expat stuff is starting to move. I've had a couple of people ask about insurance this week. I've got an apartment that somebody wants me to advertise. I've got 4 apartments to go in video as well. So there's a lot of stuff on that side that's growing. Yeah, the website thing's completely not related to Spain whatsoever. Daniel Morris says, show us the website when it's finished. Yeah, the website is actually completely somewhat different. It's technical. It's nothing to do with Spain whatsoever. When I say technical, it's technical in the sense it's for the technical industry. It's completely unrelated to Spain whatsoever. It's just that will generate a regular income from the products that are within that website. But yeah, the reason I don't bring that into it too much is quite simply it's completely separate. It's you know, for the majority of people that listen to the channel, they wouldn't actually even look at that industry, never mind know how to set the website up and everything that's related to it, because it's of a technical nature. If you can imagine having every manual for air conditioning, every air conditioning unit, you know, that, for example, that's an example of something. Not many people are really interested in the air conditioning units if you're outside of that niche. That's what I mean. It's not a website that's really that interesting, unless you're actually looking for something specific in that industry. Yeah, but yeah, the website's a bit of a pain, because it's just a lot of paperwork to finish it, because it's got to be done manually. I've got to go through and double check everything. But the positive side, once it's done, it'll only need updating probably once a year, which is the upside of this. One of the things I would say, though, I know with expat Mazaron, his viewing's growing relating to the drone stuff. The drones seem to be quite a good little niche to get into. Myself, my drone's knackered at the moment. I haven't ordered yet. Actually, that just reminds me. I've got to order 4 new motors for the drone, because I put some screws through the drone motors by mistake. Daniel Morris. I have my niche here in Göttingen. I would like to transfer slowly. Yeah, that's it. You know, that's the key. It's a transition period. That's where a lot of people go wrong when they first move out to Spain, because they're just like, right, I'm going to move there and I'm going to do something. And then they're here and they realize that a lot of the day-to-day jobs are already taken. A lot of the bar work, unless it's like in somewhere like Benidorm, where you've got as good a much chance of finding a job as somebody's been there a few years. A lot of the other jobs can be taken. I know myself, I'm not really fussed on earning as much money as I do in the UK. I'm more concerned about sustainability. You know, if we're here and pay our bills and got money in the bank as well, I'm okay with that, because I do have savings, you see, and the more money I can make in Spain, the less money I take out my savings, which will eventually become a pension fund. And that's the key element for me, is to try and separate the two. I need to make money in Spain so I don't keep touching that money. But yeah, I mean, it looks like you're into the languages already, so I think you're already off to a head start. One of the things is search around on the forums, speak to Spanish speaks as well, because if you're looking at going to somewhere like Madrid or somewhere like that, his insights are more relevant in the sense that he's in a major city, but he's also been teaching languages for 18 years here. So he already has a lot of connections on that side of things. For me, the English side is still developing. You know, I'm still researching it, and this is why this website stuff's a pain, because I have to research the website as I'm going, which means I can't focus on learning this stuff because like I said, I need to put some of the English teaching programs together so it's structured, not only for the students so they know exactly what they're doing, but also for myself, because I know every student at each level, what we're studying, etc., etc. Because I do know, I deal with a company out in, I think they're, where are they? Singapore. There's a company called Antori. I'll just stick it in the chat. Antori.com. If you go there, they're always looking for students for Thai and Vietnamese students. The pay isn't great, but you can make regular income with them. It's just one of those ones that's a bit of a safety net, because you've got to watch with the, what do you call it, the time zones, because what I found is I can only do probably 2 or 3 hours a day with them because the time zones don't suit. But that's what I mentioned to Spanish speaks, because one of the problems you get with teaching languages is you may have 2 hours at one company in the morning, then a 2-hour gap, then do a lesson somewhere else, then nothing till the evening or whatever. But having something like this, it can sort of fit in with some of those gaps, so you're still teaching. There's not as much money, but at the same time, because I don't know how much experience you've got in teaching languages, Daniel, but a lot of it is a case of getting to grips with the systems, who's teaching what, and then developing your own system, because if you can start getting the lessons privately, you can make more money, and there's a reason for that. If you look at the way people do most courses, you'll probably find the dropout is probably 30%. You know, whatever the course is, doesn't really matter. Look how many courses you start yourself. You know, and I'm on about free ones, paid ones, whatever. You get a dropout rate on everything. Now, if they're paying these middlemen for, say, 20 lessons, but only actually take 14, they've kept the money for the other 6. They don't give it to you. So if you got these lessons privately and you sell it as a course, and then they drop out with 4 lessons left, that's your money. And that's something to take on board. That's why developing your own system actually pays more. You could be earning an extra 30% possibly. Ava Lawrence, what would you say are the most British areas in Alicante? I think, you know, because I don't have a broad experience on that, because I haven't been all over the place yet. Benidorm, certainly for the tourists. I think Calpe's got a lot of Brits there. Here in La Mata, I don't know what the percentage is, probably about 20, 30% maybe, if that. But if you head a little bit further in, not far from us, you've got San Luis. That has quite a large Brit population. Quesada has a large Brit population. What's that? There's another larger one. Villamartin is there's a large British population as well. There's a lot of, they're scattered around all over the place. So yeah, you've got to bear that in mind. You know, if you want to be in those areas, fine, there's plenty of them about. The best thing to do is actually ask some of the Brits that actually live on them, because they'll tell you which ones are the good ones to live at. But also they'll know where to find a good rental property at the right price, or what's worth avoiding or buying. Daniel Morris, thanks for this site. Over 20 years, speech Dutch and French. I thought a good USP would be contacting a larger group. I was thinking I could get to the Germans in Dutch as well. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities out there. There is. I mean, one of the big things I find with corporations is once you get your foot in the door with some of them, you can actually start pulling the work off them. For, you know, because if you get somewhere like Shell Oil as a client, I'm sure they would have plenty of work for language learning in various, you know, because obviously they're a global company, but they must have some language issues somewhere where at least get some regular work, even if it's small scale. Yeah, because I know when I was out in Oman, they were sending people from Oman to train in the Netherlands. Now, the woman I was talking to, she may, well, 99% of the people I talk to out there from a management side all speak English, but I'm sure they may need some people that can speak Dutch as well, because although they're fairly educated, there's a lot of people that don't speak some of the, you know, because once you start getting into some of the manual staff, they only speak Arabic, Hindi, etc. So there might be stuff even out that way. But there's another market, actually teaching languages to people in the Middle East. It doesn't mean you have to go there if you don't, you know, because some people don't like going out there, but they've got the money and they realize that there is a market for understanding other languages, because obviously they're moving away from the oil. We're starting to realize that oil is not there forever, especially when the oil price drops in half. So they need to develop other industries. And the only way you can do that is actually getting into new markets. And that there's got to be opportunities there. I know I was talking to Brian about this the other day, and I think his daughter was teaching languages at one of the colleges or schools there. And there is a market. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, but that's the thing with languages. That's what I'm saying. I'm at the beginning of this, you know, because I can teach. Like I said, I could teach somebody English, but I need to be at a level where to teach people English. And it sounds like you're already ahead of me. You've already been in this a bit longer than me, so you'll probably find it a bit more easier to find people to work with, because obviously there's a lot of people who start these things and don't continue with it. So when you go to some of these American online schools, they won't even respond to emails. They've got that many people applying for work that they just cherry pick. They don't even respond. But I think that's just bad manners. You know, it doesn't matter how good a teacher or bad a teacher is. Somebody sent them an email, somebody filled in their questionnaire, somebody wasted 45 minutes of their time, even just saying, we're looking for American speakers or something, but thanks for applying anyway. That's enough for a bit of etiquette. But a lot of them will just throw it in the bin and ignore you. Any other questions? It's a bit quiet today, and I've got to admit I'm not a bit rough today, because I picked up. Like I said, Albie threw up in the back of the van last night when we went to pick April up from college. And then now I think I've got his cold fever type thing he was struggling with last night. So starting to get the old runny nose and sore throat. Okay, Daniel Morris, let's keep in contact. Only just started Spanish. Okay, yeah, because my Spanish is still at its early stages. My wife speaks pretty good. Mixed up the words. It's pretty good Spanish. She's doing a college course with an exam on Friday, which is completely in Spanish. So, but she'll say, "Oh, I don't speak much Spanish." Well, she does. She speaks pretty good Spanish. But yeah, that's why I persuaded her to go in the course. It's like, well, do I really need, it's more to do with getting April more confident with being completely immersed in Spanish people, so that she can, you know, get out there a bit more. And because she's good at Spanish already, but it'd be nice for her to have some more friends locally outside of La Mata. Thanks very much. Yeah, okay, get well. Yeah, that's it. I think I'm going to be down with a fever tonight. Ava Lawrence, you probably cover this, but do you need to be fluent in Spanish to teach English out there? No. ESL, they don't actually want you speaking. If you do a TESOL course, it's one of the things that they will say is they leave their native tongue outside the room. The whole point is they shouldn't be speaking in your lessons. You're trying to get people away from that. Their focus should be on learning English, not to be translating back, because the reason being is it doesn't force the language out of people. I can understand when you get to a level where you're trying to explain something, say like my throat's dry now, ambiguity or something, where it's a complex word, but at the same time, if you're explaining that sort of thing, then that level of English should already be at a level that can comprehend what you're talking about if you explained it in English, if that makes sense. It's like, you know, if you start teaching ABCs, 1, 2, 3, and all that sort of stuff, it's at a beginner level. Intermediate, people are already starting to structure sentences. So you're trying to prize it out of people. You use things like visual aids, missing words, that sort of thing, depending on the levels. I could probably help you with that offline, because I have a lot of material and stuff that would help if you wanted some information on actually learning to teach English. But yeah, it's more a case of no, you don't need to speak Spanish, because they shouldn't be speaking Spanish in your lessons. Ava Lawrence, thank God. I taught English in a school in Venerones a few years ago, and they said much the same. Just wanted to check it wasn't just them. No, because the reason being is you can compensate. If somebody goes to you, like if I said something to you in English and you don't speak any English, you're not going to work it out if the guy next to you says, I just said coat or whatever, because you're trying to get them to think, and you can't do that if somebody keeps giving them the answer. You've got to at least try and get them to get on the right page with it. And yeah, you're right. It's yeah, you don't need to speak Spanish. What you do need, though, is to develop your Spanish at the same time for your own benefit, because you're still going to talk to parents. You're still going to be talking to the principal and other teachers, etc. Because most of the teachers at the kids' school do not speak English. We have several meetings a year with teachers on one-to-ones, etc. And they'll go through things, but they don't translate it in English. We end up with this sort of Spanglish because they like learning English off us, but my wife understands them anyways. So it's a case of they want to practice their English when they speak to us, but at the same time, we're helping them. Although we're actually there for the kids, we're helping them with their English by giving them some new words and expressions, etc. At the same time as we're trying to speak to them in Spanish. Well, I try to speak to them in Spanish. My wife does speak to them in Spanish. But yeah, in that sort of instance, you may get somebody who wants to practice their English on you, and then you're in luck, because obviously they're going to try and talk to you in English. But when they're making mistakes, you're going to have to try and correct it. And you might have to throw in there some Spanish, because obviously this isn't a Spanish. That's not an English lesson. That's say the principle. And then we may go, well, why is that wrong? And then obviously it's a bit more expressive. Yeah, because those things happen. But that's probably beneficial for you as well, though, because what you're getting is you're getting forced to speak more Spanish. So you benefit, and whoever you talk to benefits. Yeah, that's the way to go. I do some language exchange stuff as well, where you can actually have somebody in Spain or wherever, Argentina, whatever country, they'll actually speak to you in Spanish, and then you speak to them in you speak to them in Spanish and they speak to you in English, and then you try and help each other learn. That's a cheap way of learning Spanish, just for those that are actually wanting to learn on a tight budget. But I really do recommend going and annoying people. If you want to learn Spanish, go and annoy somebody at the local cafe or something. If you're like here, where I think the average population must be over 60. So go in there. Yeah, that's it. Daniel Morris, I agree. You get paid to learn a language when you teach there. Yeah, you do. I mean, because you have to. You're sort of forced into it, because nobody's there to compensate for you. But if they don't speak English, then you're having to compensate in many ways, but not to the students. It's to the parents, it's to the principal, it's to the other people around in that environment that may not speak any English whatsoever, but they may not want to speak English as well, which is the other side of it. You know, I mean, it's quite funny at the salute here, because several of them do speak English, but they'll tell you to go and get a translator unless you're local like us, and then they're fine. Because they know us. But if you just turned up there, they'll go, no, you no point to a sign, go get a translator. But they speak English. They do. Because we go in there and start, I go in there, I start speaking Spanish, and they can see I'm struggling with some of it. So then they'll start speaking English. But because I already crossed that bridge of them having to deal with my bad Spanish, they then go, okay, he's not going to go away, and he's already trying to speak Spanish, so we'll meet him halfway. And I think that's the key thing here. But I've never found anybody that's actually complained about you not speaking Spanish beyond the people that turn up on a regular basis. What I mean is when people go to immigration with no translator and they haven't got the right paperwork, etc., because they're annoyed you haven't bothered to bring the paperwork, and then not had a translator, because they're now trying to explain to you what paperwork you need. At the same time, you haven't even brought somebody that can actually understand what paperwork you actually need. If that makes sense. Ava Lawrence, yeah. Annoying in Vinaroz. I learned more Catalan than standard Spanish. Is it proper Spanish in Alicante? We're a bit south of Alicante. We're about 45 minutes south in La Mata. They do speak Spanish here predominantly, but there's a big push on Valencian here. But the funny thing with that is there's a bit of a there's been a few protests and stuff relating to the language, because I think it's 56% of the population in this area aren't even Spanish. I think the statistics actually show that the number of English speakers was 13%. Valencian was 16%. So it was actually more people that spoke Valencian than there was English. But on top of that, it's political, because most of the Spanish people here do not speak Valencian. And they don't think it should be enforced on people because they know that English, from the people we've spoken to, English is more useful in the sense of global working, because, for example, the amount of Spaniards that are currently in the UK looking for work or working in the UK, having been, if they spoke English, or they do speak English, it's been easier to find work, or would be easier to find work. With Catalan Valencian, it's regional. So it's not a lot of use outside of the regions. And that's where these arguments coming from locally. And we haven't got too involved in it, but it's just been part of the AMPA, the Parent Teachers Association, etc. We get the updates on what's going on, where the protests are, etc. But yeah, they're not happy about it, because obviously we're from Valencia, we're about 2.5 hours away. Yeah, Daniel Morris at Ava. You can offer tandem, a way of learning over a cup of coffee. Yeah, that's it. There is plenty of ways to do that. That's what I was saying. It's beneficial for both sides on that sense, because all of that is free, because you're giving something and they're giving something. So there's no transfer of funds on that. It's not a money making thing, but it's a way to get your language skills up quite quickly. I know myself, speak it, because I find the more you use the language, the faster you learn it. There's for studying on Duolingo, etc. I'm about 55% or 56% fluent, but I'm not using it regularly. But I can still log in there and do like four lessons straight off with near enough zero mistakes, because it's too simplistic. Because the problem I have is like communication. I'm not spending enough time with Spaniards to speak in Spanish. But something like that, as you say, the tandem version, Daniel, that'd be a good one. That's why I say about trying to annoy somebody over a coffee, because you can schedule it for at least 2-3 times a week, and you go there and you just proactively teaching each other. The other thing you could do as well, which May, who's Gordon's wife, has done. There's a student nearby who about 3 times a week, they May speaks Spanish to her and she speaks English to May. But for the student, she's getting free tuition in one way, because she's actually got somebody that's helping her with her language abilities. But obviously, her Spanish level is obviously fluent as well. So even from that, if you've actually got a neighbor who wants to learn English, or even their parents say, go and learn English, that's another route as well. That's been a nice chat, this one, actually. It's been quite an interesting one, especially getting onto the languages, because it is one of the frustrating things I find in Spain, is actually getting your head around the language and finding a way to actually learn it where it's easier to learn. I was talking to Igor, and Igor said it took him 4 years to learn Spanish to the level he's at now. Prior to that, though, he'd been here a few years, but he'd found he didn't develop his language skills because he spent most of his time around Russian and Ukrainians. It's only when you start immersing yourself, it starts dragging it out of you. It starts pulling it out of you. It's no longer, you want to learn it. It's you need to learn it because somebody stood in front of you asking you what you want. So yeah. But thanks for watching. I'm going to cut it off now because you probably hear my throat's actually drying up like no tomorrow. And with a blocked nose, I'm now struggling to breathe. But yeah, thanks for everybody's comments. I'm going to start doing these a bit more regular until I get busy again. I've got the website to do, but like tonight, I'll sit and do the website after I pick April up from college. But I might do another one of these tomorrow, about probably 3. Oh, hang on. I might have to be somewhere. I'll try and do one at 3 o'clock tomorrow. The reason I say try is April mentioned being somewhere tomorrow. I think we're going to go and have a look at there's some monuments or something that's nearby. So, but we'll see, because the thing is, once I drop the kids off at school, the bus stop in the morning, might better whiz round, be back for 3 o'clock anyway. But anyway, thanks for watching, and thanks for getting engaged and getting involved. I really do appreciate it. Everyone have a great day. Yeah, I'll Lawrence says, give your throat a rest. I will do, because I know my voice is going. All right, have a great day, everyone.